to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please silence cell phone, pagers, and the such like that. Do we have any citizen concerns that someone would like to speak on that is not already on the agenda? Hearing none, I will move approval of today's agenda.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 3 through 5 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of the June 15 meeting. 4 is approval of claims. And 5 is board administration, approval of resolution thanking and commending Gary Brown for years of service with Woodbury County. I will move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Monson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. I think at this time, we're not at our set time. Mark, would you like to do approval of Woodbury County nonprofit funding request for Lamb Arts Limited?
Joshua, you got anything new?
Get my microphone on here. I did have a chance to look at some of the information being put out by the state auditor's office. Guidance from the state auditor and his views on public funding of nonprofits. I think from what I gather from reading that is that if the state auditor were reviewing the request, he most likely would say that it's not something the county could be doing. At the same time, he has a very restrictive view of what you can do. I think that we've probably in the past had similar requests that we have fulfilled, and our auditors, or our external auditors, have not raised any issues. But I think that it might make sense to reach out to our external auditor and see, ask them specifically if they would have a concern about a particular request. The other possibility, there was some discussion that it could be used as part of a match for particular grants if we knew more about what those grants were, and specifically if they were a state or federal grant that required a local match, then you would have they'd essentially be specifically authorized by statute, and I think that even the state auditor wouldn't have a problem with that. So maybe we could get additional information there.
Do you anticipate how long it'll take before you have solid answers, or?
They may have them right here.
Oh,
Diana Woolley with Lamb Arts. I'm executive director, and then my husband Russ Woolley, who is managing artistic director. And I do understand what you're talking about. Enhance Iowa is only one of many, many grants. Several foundations want to know that the community is behind whatever is going on, that they want to know the county's that everybody's invested. Now, I wrote this down. It's not very long, but it shows you maybe some other areas that you guys go, oh, this might work. All right, so a couple of years ago, we were asked by the city if we'd be interested in this project across the street. Now, that project across the street is $17.4 million, which is a lot for anybody, including a nonprofit. Now, So we are pleased with the fundraising that we've done so far. We're at 7 million, but we will need help to totally reach this goal. And as we were just talking about, we need to show that we need to secure additional grants and funding from government and other sources to show that enthusiastic financial support from both the city and the county. So in addition to your financial support, you can take solace and pride knowing that by helping to fund this project, you have joined with donors in 147 different zip codes in the tremendous task of restoring, now they're going to historic, restoring an essential part of Sioux City's history. We are so pleased with the outpouring of public support. Now, this county funding would serve as an important economic development in downtown Sioux City and the surrounding county. With the 625 Douglas building in full operation, the influx of tax revenue from increased shopping, restaurants, and bar business, as well as the attraction of more entertainment, tourism will boost hotel and motel activity and participation in all that Siouxland has to offer. Then we come to job creation, which I know is a big one when we're with some of the grants that I've been working on recently. We currently have 2 full-time people and a couple hourly people. This is going to be increasing to 6 full-time people, 4 part-time positions, in addition to hourly employees. Some of these positions will be held by locals, and others may be filled by people from outside our area who will be joining our community, making it even larger. So
And one thing I would just like to clarify, this ask is not to sustain us. This ask is for that project. We're not coming here to say, hey, we need help to pay our utility bill, we need help to do this, I need to buy some screws for building a set. That is not our ask. Our ask is this restoration project. And so I know you get all tied up in a not-for-profit because we are indeed a not-for-profit. But the ask is very different than sometimes we're not-for-profit. We'll go to an organization.
yeah, we're asking for the
for that
building,
economic development.
which
The economic development department in the city are the people who called us. They said, this is what needs to be done.
Does that help, Joshua? Did it give you some more ideas?
There is a possibility that the economic development angle could be pursued. Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. And if the city operates under the same set of rules that we are, obviously, and if they've found a way to be a part of the project, then I think discussions with them would be beneficial as well. See what their involvement is, and
Yeah. Well, they were the ones that talked to us. It was
Yeah.
Well,
their idea to begin with, so.
The state auditor's ruling is different for cities versus counties, is it not? I thought he said it was only in counties that they couldn't fund nonprofits.
there's some statutory provisions where cities have more leeway, more ability by statute. The auditors, what he's hanging his hat on is a provision from the Iowa Constitution, which would apply equally to cities and counties.
So the other thing I was thinking, personally, my fear is taking money that, we don't know where we're funding our jail from yet. Still, that's not been resolved. Whether or not we can use COVID dollars there or not has not been resolved. One thing that I was thinking, since a provision on the COVID relief funding was that, if nonprofits could show a loss of revenue, which
we could.
absolutely, because you
We could,
had
but that would be the old building, and that has nothing to do with this. new
right.
building.
But if you
Everything's
showed
separate.
a loss of revenue for the last year and could submit what that was, if we came up with a system to help make different nonprofits whole for their loss of revenue over the last year, that could be a way to maybe get, I don't know, 20,000, 50,000, I don't know what your annual revenue might have been.
That would be, it would be difficult for us to separate, yeah. that would be tough.
Yeah,
Because we're trying to keep everything separate.
yeah.
I have a couple thoughts on this. One is, the state auditor is not the state attorney general, and he's issuing legal opinions. Come on. If we really want a legal opinion, let's get it from the attorney general, and I don't think we're going to get one out of him because I don't think this is an issue. The other thing is the jail. If we can't use COVID money for the jail, we're going to have all kinds of money. So the little bit we're going to talk about here in relationship to the jail, I don't think makes a difference. Anyone else?
Well, I'm just going to interject and say we do have a set time at 4:40 and 4:45. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds
Right.
on this for the moment, but Matthew, Justin? Are we there? We are. We'll be back with you in a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
All right. We are at a set time of 4:40 for Community and Economic Development. Public hearing, approved first reading of Commercial Wind Energy Conversion Systems Ordinance.
Good evening, David Gleiser, Director of Community Economic Development Department. This evening, we're going to be talking about a new or a proposed ordinance for commercial wind energy conversion systems in unincorporated Woodbury County. And the reason why we're proposing this is because we believe county staff, the work group that formed to work on this, we believe that the language in our existing ordinance, our existing zoning ordinance, does not provide the protections and assurances for private property and public property that we need. And so we put together a draft, which you have here before you. And if you don't mind, I'd like to run through a real quick PowerPoint presentation to provide some background and context as to how we came up with these recommendations. The slide right here you can see is an excerpt of our current zoning ordinance. And here you can see that in our utilities section, commercial wind energy is allowed by a conditional use in 2 zoning districts, agricultural preservation and the general industrial. If you go to the next slide, please. This will give you an idea of what a conditional use application, what that process looks like. It costs $250. It's non-refundable. The applicant's required to provide a certified abstractor's listing of property owners within 500 feet. We use that for the public notice to let people know that we'll have the public hearings as required by law. And then basically it just asks those folks to address the questions and the criteria of that's set forth in the zoning ordinance. Am I at a set time?
Well, we've got another one at 4:45, but keep going.
Okay. But so basically, it's a very simple application, and it's reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. They're asked to make a recommendation to our Volunteer Board of Adjustment. Both of those bodies are volunteers, and the Board of Adjustment ultimately has the decision on whether they approve with conditions, or deny the application. If you go to the next page, here is the current setback distances for those 2 particular zoning districts. And I think if you'd like, I can pause now for your next, or would you like me to keep going? 1 minute? Okay. But I think what this sort of depicts is that these setback distances really aren't far enough for a commercial wind farm, a commercial wind turbine to be on your private property or your neighbor's property. And so that said, if you could go to the next slide, please, Karen. These are what we believe are the county's vulnerabilities with our current process and our current zoning ordinance. Insufficient setback distances for individual and public property. We have absolutely no recourse for damages that occur to our secondary roads from when these construction projects take place. We also have no assurances in our existing zoning ordinance for the removal of these decommissioned wind turbines. And so we want to make sure that, we have those assurances and those protections in. And to be honest with you, $250 does not do anything to offset the amount of time and resources that we expend at the county to review such an application. Next slide, please. A couple of other reasons why I think it's important that we do this is because in 2005, Woodbury County passed and adopted its general development plan, which is also more commonly known as the county's comprehensive plan. We have, specific goals in that document as it relates to land use and economic development. And this language is from the development plan, and I think it speaks to what we're trying to accomplish here with this new ordinance.
All right, we're going to go on to our next set time for the moment because I anticipate this public hearing is going to take longer with the folks in place, so.
I'll be back.
I know it. We have set time of 4:45 for building services, public hearing for 28th Street Development Project, also known as LEC Offsite Improvements. Kenny, please.
Building Services Director Kenny Schmitz. This agenda item is just to conduct the public hearing for the 28th Street Development Project with the LEC Offsite Improvements. And we're just looking for the board to conduct the hearing and to seek any input from any interested parties for or against the project.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Kenny before we go to the open public hearing?
When was this set to go open up for bids?
Shane, have you got the actual?
Or like the whole timeline on this project, I guess?
Bid should be back on July 8th. So it's out
Yep.
we have
So July 8th, they get come back?
and there will be a pre-construction meeting this Thursday at 2:30? 2:30.
So do you anticipate beginning construction August or before yet?
This is just for the 28th Street.
This is
Yeah.
the road.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
And then, what is it, like a month, 2-month project? How much work is it? I don't even know.
Well, we've given them, sorry. Matt Miller with Stoth and Associates. We've given them the same timeline as the LEC project for completion.
Okay.
They are required to complete the water line in enough time to have potable water to the site for use during construction of the jail.
How many bidders are we anticipating or hoping for?
We're hoping for as many as possible. Right now, we have 4 solid plan holders.
Do we need to go into a public hearing?
Yeah, I think so. Public hearing is now open for those that would wish to speak on an input from interested parties for or against the public improvement project. First of all, do we have anybody on the negative side of completing this project? Seeing and hearing none, do we have anybody on the positive side for or the public improvement project? Hearing none, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Monson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
That's going to be the end of that, correct? Miss Deputy Auditor, okay. All right, we are back to public, let's go ahead, I think we're ready for the public hearing on and approve the first reading of commercial wind energy conversion. The public hearing is open. Must not be windy enough for wind energy today.
That's Kenny's department.
Do we have anybody, since the public hearing is open, do we have anybody that would like to speak against a wind energy conversion systems ordinance?
Mr. Chair, would you like the director to finish his presentation first?
Oh, where'd he go? Yeah. And understand you're in the public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay.
For folks that may have just walked in or walked in a little late, we're just going over a presentation that gives a little bit of a background as to why county staff are proposing this new commercial wind farm ordinance to the County Board of Supervisors. And it's basically because we believe the existing zoning ordinance, which does allow commercial wind farms to exist in Woodbury County, does not have enough protections in place for private property, public property, and for the county to have assurances that the roads are put back in place like they were before they started the project, as well as some assurances that these structures are removed once they're decommissioned. And so basically what we're talking about is regulating commercial wind farms, which that potential already exists in Woodbury County. And we were just catching up on some history and showing that in 2005, the county adopted a set of long-term goals in its development plan, and those incorporate land use and economic development, and both of those goals speak to what we are proposing in this new ordinance. Karen, next slide. And the folks that have put this together, the working group, was the county engineer, assistant county attorney, county zoning coordinator, and myself. We looked at other ordinances of other counties across the state. We also reached out and requested technical assistance and feedback from the Iowa State Association of Counties, ISU Extension, Iowa Environmental Council, and the National Resources Conservation Service of Iowa. As a working group, we reached a consensus on a draft product. Go back, Karen, the next slide, please. And we presented that to the County Planning and Zoning Commission and also to the Board of Adjustment. We explained to them that in Iowa, we have two different ways that we could skin this cat. We could do it through the zoning ordinance as a conditional use, and I gave you some of that background earlier, or we can do it as a standalone ordinance and let the Board of Supervisors make that decision. There was consensus amongst both of those groups that if the Board of Supervisors would like to retain that decision-making authority, they would support that decision. And after, coming to the board last Tuesday and asking you folks to set the date and time for these public hearings, we have since been in contact with various stakeholder groups, folks representing the electric utility and renewable energy industry, as well as folks from the conservation community. And we've been working very fast and furiously since Tuesday and since we put it out there for the world that we were going to take a look at this tonight. And we're trying to incorporate some of those suggestions and recommendations. And it's my I expect that we will make additional revisions as we go throughout this process over the next couple of meetings. Next slide, Karen. And the final steps, though, and follow-up actions would be to, after it's gone through the 3 readings and it's passed and adopted, it actually becomes effective the date that we publish it. After that, it's just a matter of updating our website and our marketing materials. And we do need to amend the existing county and zoning ordinance in certain sections where it's relevant. And then I'd also like the Board of Supervisors to discuss and potentially adopt a wind energy conversion property special valuation ordinance, which is basically a tax abatement program similar to like what we do for industrial property. Go ahead, Karen. And I would just say that since Tuesday, at Tuesday's meeting last week, Supervisor Monson asked the question if this ordinance had language in there to protect the Luss Hills. I acknowledged at that time that it didn't, but our work group believes that it should. We actually went back and revised the language on the first page and incorporated some of the land use goals and economic development goals from our general development plan. We also reached out to the Nature Conservancy of Iowa and asked them to help provide a definition, a formal definition that we can include for the Luss Hills. And so we will add language to the definition section of our ordinance for the Luss Hills. And we included them in our protected area with a setback distance of 1 mile. And you can see that visual graphic right there is, it's a graphic of what I've been told everybody in the Iowa conservation community acknowledges as the Luss Hills. I've received a GIS shape file, and I intend to provide that to IT and have them create a layer on Beacon that will be able to overlay this on our mapping and show folks, about where about 1 mile setback is from. And so those are some of the accommodations that we've made as of today as it relates to feedback we've received from the conservation community. Next slide.
What are the blue dots? What are the blue dots on that map?
I'm sorry? Aren't they cities? No, they look, I don't have that.
Lodge.
Oh, they're just highway markers?
They're highway markers, I think they're road markers. But if you go to the next slide, we've been in contact and in communication with folks from other industries, from private utility and renewable energy. And I don't have the ability to incorporate those revisions for you folks tonight. What I would like the board to do is acknowledge the draft, and then I would recommend that we incorporate these conservation amendments to the draft and then move forward with our reading. Next week, I would propose some revisions to the ordinance that would address the comments and feedback that we've received from the private sector. But if anybody has any questions at this point on the document, anything in the document, I would be more than happy to try to answer those questions at this point or allow time for the additional comment from the public.
Can you take a second to describe what a 1 mile setback from the less is from the defined boundary from the map?
Correct.
Okay. And can you talk about why a mile? Why was that the number that was, at this point, why was that a number that was chosen?
We looked at some of the ordinances of counties that actually have Luss Hills and that do have a wind ordinance. And what we did is we basically took that mapping and we know our county well enough that we feel like 1 mile from that particular boundary line should be more than sufficient because the actual range of the Luss Hills should be a few miles, at least 2 miles from there. But that is something that I believe we are open to suggestions or public feedback on that. And if the public feels, in the sake of health or public safety, that's too short, we would entertain other recommendations.
The $1,000 permit fee, that's the one that is currently $250
Yes.
in the.
Well, no, actually, under this structure, the $1,000 would be for each wind turbine in the project, whereas a conditional use permit under the zoning ordinance is a $250 flat fee.
Okay.
And I will give a sneak peek into some of the comments and feedback that we received from the private sector so far. I think that next week we will propose a little bit of a retooling of what we're proposing as it relates to the actual building permit and, the actual special use permit and the building permit. It's going to be, I think what we're going to try to set this up is similar to how our subdivisions are done, where a developer will come in, meet with county staff, and have a preliminary plat meeting. So they would bring in their preliminary wind farm master plan. County staff will review and work on collecting all the information that the board needs to make a decision, and then they will put out their, their proposed plan. And then if approved for the use, it would just be no different than a building permit for a house. We have defined setback distances, and administratively, we would be able to issue a building permit when they're ready. And so I think that what I would recommend, if there's consensus with the work group, is to propose a flat application fee to apply for this special use permit. Let's just say it's $500 to apply. The Board of Supervisors may approve it or they may deny it. If they're denied, at least, that's all they're out is $500. Whereas under the current structure, if they're going to propose 100 wind turbines, that's 100 times 1,000. That's a bigger application fee than $500 if they don't even get approved. And so what I think what we will do, what's more fair, is to charge them per turbine if they are approved. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it'd be a $50 application to get your chance, and then if the board approves it and you win, then you pay the actual fee per turbine, and we will probably lower that to be more competitive as well.
So without this ordinance, currently could wind energy components be constructed on our land only by approval of the volunteer board of adjustment?
Correct.
Okay, so this is, obviously we want this to be more public than it would otherwise be as an extra step. That's one of the recommendations, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And, we do have some setback distances in there today, and I think that the work group would like a chance to reconvene and discuss some of the feedback that we've received from the private sector and from the utilities, and work to try to incorporate what makes sense. We may not be able to incorporate, we may not want to incorporate all of their recommendations, but on the things that we believe make sense for Woodbury County, that's what we'll probably bring forward next week, and that will probably include an increase in the setback distance for a residential structure.
So to be clear, there's nothing we can, if someone walked in and said they wanted to put up a turbine, it's okay by Iowa code. All we're doing is protecting our county infrastructure at this point. They could put one up. They could get one approved.
As of today, as of yesterday, our office, Woodbury County, could receive an application for a conditional use permit in the agricultural preservation or the general industrial zoning district. Those are really the two qualifying requirements, is that it be in that zoning district. If it's in that zoning district and they give us $250 and an abstractor's listing, fill out the application, then it's a matter of getting in front of our volunteer zoning commission. They get a chance to ask some questions, and then they formulate their recommendation to the Board of Adjustment, who ultimately makes that call.
What if one of those two zoning areas is in the Los Hills?
Currently, there is no, well, it would depend what zoning district that parcel is zoned. We do not have a general conservation zoning district for the entire Los Hills.
So the answer is today they could build one,
Correct.
if those are the correct.
But Supervisor Monson, I would reinforce the fact that you have a conditional use process in place. And so, if it's, there's criteria that the zoning commission and the Board of Adjustment review when they make their decision, and that's things like, how does this affect the neighborhood? How does it affect public utilities? How is public safety served, and yada, yada, yada. So there's.
I think you got to have it in here that says you can't do it in the Los Hills. That is a national area. It's a national landmark.
That's what he said they were adding, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Will that prevent it?
absolutely.
Okay.
So, yes, absolutely. I took your feedback to heart, Supervisor Monson. That was the first thing I did. The next day got on the phone, called Graham McGaffin, and he's been a world of help. There's some folks in the audience that, you know, I'm sure have something to say about what we're doing, but if the board has any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
I'm just glad to know that not only does it protect the lowest hills, but it brings more transparency to the process. And rather than being a step to bring in necessarily a particular project, it makes it, adds more rules and actually makes it stricter.
I would add to your group of inquiries the Les Hills Alliance, which Karen can find an address. It's down in Oakland.
Pisgah.
Well, the people that manage it are out of Oakland, the RC&D down there.
Any other questions for Mr. Gleiser?
And basically, this addresses decommissioned turbines, liability to the roads, liability to the neighbors, setbacks. And then this is not affecting any individual contracts that farmers have with wind energy companies. We have no say in that regardless anyway, correct? And, I mean, this is basically, as a county board in our zoning department, you know, affecting the things we affect in the process. We don't say whether or not windmills are made. We don't say whether or not, you know, a windmill company wants to put one here or there, as long as it's not in the Les Hills anyway. So.
Essentially. I feel like we're doing a better job regulating something that's already allowed, and you know, we're doing it in a timely manner because we have neighboring and, you know, adjacent counties that have announced substantial projects, you know, 200 megawatt wind farms, 150, 200 wind farm turbine, you know, it's a substantial project. And you folks know the cost of you know, what it costs to restore our gravel roads back to where they need to be.
About 10 million.
So this is something that the county engineer was very adamant about, and it's, you know, something that we all believe we need. And it's just going to make things, it's just going to regulate them better for Woodbury County.
You know, I'm personally not normally in favor of increasing regulation on any kind of industry or, you know, what people do with their own private investment, but at the same time, this is an industry pretty heavily subsidized, and there should be some kind of guidelines they at least follow when they come in, I think. So that's my personal belief on it, and that's why I'm willing to add regulations where we have none.
All right, I'd like to give Mark Nara about 3 minutes.
I'll try and take less than that. I think one of the major provisions in this ordinance, and one of the reasons that I encouraged David to begin to work on it, is the protection of the roads. These tend to be highly disruptive of the roads. Modifications need to be made to the intersections to allow those extremely long vehicles to navigate on opposing 66-foot right-of-ways. That doesn't leave a lot of room at corners. Counties have spent a good deal of money in modifying roads to assist in the construction of these wind farms. The road agreement that goes hand in hand with this process will assist us in doing that. One additional thing that's been done, and we modeled this after Kossuth County, is that haul routes are established. If some of you weren't on the board when the majority of the 4-lane 20 work was being done, but our complaints about dust and haul roads just was extensive on anywhere that was within 2 to 3 miles of the Highway 20 project because of the additional truckloads. When you look at the average wind farm and how spread it is, getting haul roads determined, treating those roads and getting somebody to pay the expense of that dust control to protect our residents, to reduce the opportunity for accidents, all of those things are contained within that road agreement that goes hand in hand with this ordinance. And at this point in time, if somebody came in tomorrow and wanted to do 250 windmills out there for electricity, we wouldn't have the ability to necessarily put that in place. So I encourage the board to continue with this process. So thank you.
Courtesy of no, I'm done. Courtesy of one of the guests in the audience today, I've got several pictures of the corners that had to be adjusted, as Mark said, where it's a 90-degree corner, and many of the arcs that were in there to accommodate these long-winded trailers that are not able to make a 90-degree corner with the width of our gravel road. So that takes up a lot of real estate too. But as we are in a public hearing, I will ask for first any positive comments. Please try and limit your comments to 3 minutes, if we have anybody today. Mr. McGaffin.
Chairman DeWitt, Supervisors.
You are?
Graham McGaffin with the Nature Conservancy in Iowa, Les Hills Project Director. Encouraging the county, encouraging Mr. Gleiser on the development of the Les Hills as an area to be avoided. Migratory birds, North American birds in general, have declined precipitously since 1970 by 30%. You know, a significant decline in birds, making areas like the Les Hills, which contain about 75% of Iowa's remaining prairie, all that more important. Birds flock here. You know, conservation projects are just going gangbusters in the Les Hills with a lot of support from the community, from the state, and so I think avoiding the area is all that much more important for the wildlife that really depend on this. And Supervisor Muncy, to your point, it's a nationally significant area. It's an internationally significant area. There's only one other place in the world like this, in the north central region of China. So, yeah, here encouraging the county to include the Les Hills as a area to be avoided when considering wind development. Thank you.
Anyone else on the positive side?
Evening. My name is Matt Ott. I'm with Mid-American Energy. I'm in the Resource Development Group. I help develop our wind and solar projects as well as our EV infrastructure. So just here tonight, we saw this published and want to weigh in. Really here tonight to answer any questions that the board may have. You know, we thought the ordinance was well thought out. It looked like a lot of time and effort had been put into it. We did provide some comments, suggestions on how to refine things to make it easier to, you know, to developers, as well as, you know, maybe increasing setbacks here or there. Just some things for the board and the working group to consider. So really, as Mid-Americans, you know, we are the largest utility in Iowa. We have the most turbines operating in and throughout Iowa. So we have a ton of experience. So really tonight, I'm just happy to answer any questions that the board may have just on a general development or construction or else.
How many turbines do you have in Iowa?
Over 3,000.
How many in neighboring counties?
I don't have that number offhand. I apologize, but
okay.
You know, our turbines are throughout Iowa, northwest to the central, you know, the east side of. So we are not necessarily in just one region or just our service territory.
What's a typical number of turbines that a project you could anticipate seeing in Woodbury County?
50 to 100. It just depends. You know, we do a lot of due diligence. Obviously, the setbacks play a part in that, as well as we have other studies and reports and things like that. That, you know, we have additional due diligence that we do. Terrain is going to play a big part, obviously. You know, hilltops and things like that. You know, there's some parts that have a lot of terraces and things like that. So those are things that have to be taken in consideration.
Any other questions for Mr. Ott? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other on the positive or for the wind generation? Hearing none, I'll take comments from those opposed to wind generation. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Doug Nelson, Wayne, Nebraska. I'm here as a citizen of the United States, a concerned citizen. They're building turbines in Wayne County, and they're growing like the plague. Wayne County is not zoned, so I agree with this fella, one of these guys here, that said a property owner can do with his property like he sees fit. To begin with, you guys mentioned a 600-foot setback. I picked that up somewhere along the line. In Antelope County, about a year ago, one of those turbines threw a blade and it went almost 800 feet. So you might keep that in mind. I'm a numbers guy, and about 10 years ago, I intended to start building turbines on my property. And I had an ideal situation with a sandy corner on an irrigated farm with a power line going right down the middle of the section. And after I studied this, the economics on it a little bit, I decided this is not for me. But my sales guy said, oh, you don't understand. You got to consider the grants and the subsidies and the net metering arrangement and everything to make it work. Well, that's coming indirectly from the American taxpayers. I picked a formula off of the Nebraska Extension website to calculate the productive value of a megawatt of wind generating capacity. So 1 megawatt being, well, here's how it went. Generating capacity per hour times an efficiency factor times the wholesale price equals the actual production value of the electricity. In this case, 1 megawatt being 1,000 kilowatts, capable of generating 1,000 kilowatt hours per hour, but times only a 40% efficiency factor will put out 400 kilowatt hours in an hour. And the wholesale market, according to the project manager of one of the wind farms that I know, he said they had a long-term contract with Omaha Public Power for 1.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you're generating 400 kilowatt hours per hour off of this 1 megawatt generator and you're selling them for $0.015, your revenue is $6 an hour. Or at absolute max, about $52,000 a year if the wind blew 24/7. In the Sioux City Journal a couple years back, there was an article featuring Mid-American Energy. And according to the article anyway, it said the first 4,991 megawatts of Mid-American Energy's turbines cost over $12 billion. Well, you do a little calculation on that article, and it comes out to $2.4 million per megawatt. And it didn't clarify whether that included any tax credits or treasury grants. So that's okay. So I just go with the 2.4 million. If you take a 3% interest factor times the cost times the construction cost of that megawatt of 2.4 million, if you take 3% in interest on that, you got $72,000. You only got $52,000 worth of revenue to offset it. If you took 10% depreciation factor on that $2.4 million megawatt, you got $240,000. You know, and you got $52,000 offset that in your interest, and there's hundreds of expenses. I don't have time to get into that. So the point being, it's not about generating electricity. It's about harvesting the depreciation and the tax credits. And to understand that fully, and you mentioned that the subsidies, but I doubt if you know to the extent. The tax credit, for instance, if you think about it, is worthless to someone who owes no taxes. But its value is directly related to the tax bracket that the investor might be in. For instance, a 2.3 cent production tax credit per kilowatt hour is the same as tax-free income because it's a credit to be used to pay a non-deductible expense. The pre-tax value of 2.3 cents is 4.6 cents. So if you were in the 50% tax bracket and you had an income of 4.6 cents, you'd lose half of that to taxes. You'd have your 2.3 cents left tax-free. Well, the tax credit is the same as tax-free income. So depending on your tax bracket, this is huge. So to compare apples to apples, you must have a tax number, which would be the 4.6, the pre-tax value of a tax credit. And the wholesale market is about $0.015. Would that be correct? Okay. Well, that's the research I got. So if you divide 4.6 by 1.5 cents, you know, that would be like me selling corn for $1.50 and getting $4.60 from the government. If you do that arithmetic, you come out with a subsidy of 307%. There's your subsidy. That's why they're building windmills. Now, you can take the depreciation on that 2.4 million. If you're in the 50% tax bracket, that'll save you 1.2 million in taxes.
Well, this year they're going to be running 4 million to build, but
anyway,
and I'm not trying to cut you off, Doug, because I agree with you on the numbers and arithmetic of it. That I don't think windmills come up without the federal subsidies, but that's not really something we have any say or effect of. And
okay.
In essence, our ordinance is basically taking about a third of Woodbury County and making it unusable for wind energy.
Okay.
So, if anything, we are restricting wind energy development in Woodbury County by doing this, but I wouldn't say we're like eliminating it. We're just trying to guide it and put it in the right places.
I think the economic development people should take a good look at that and ask for a cash flow that accounts for the grants and the tax credits. And also, who owns what and where they're located. Quickly, the turbines out here to the west, around Emerson and Allen area, were built in Madrid, Spain. And the project was started by a company called Tradewind, which is a Kansas City-based corporation owned by Enel, which is a global Rome-based corporation in Italy. Tradewind started the project, run it a few years, and then had it for sale, and they sold it to Rattlesnake Creek. The trigger of that sale was them getting rid of a navigational beacon at the Wayne Airport, and they paid the Wayne Airport $1.5 million to take out that beacon to get rid of and bypass FAA regulations so the buyer could build closer and taller to the Wayne Airport. So they sold the project to, when they accomplished that agreement with the Wayne Airport, they sold their project to Rattlesnake Creek. The irony is, Rattlesnake Creek is a subsidiary of Enel. So the left hand sold to the right hand. So the money most likely is leaving the country, ended up in Rome. So there's a lot of things that we need to unwind when we get into this business, and I've studied it for about 10 years, and I'm available for information seminars. My team and I would be glad to meet with anybody in a group or individually. And I just accumulated a lot of information. I'm just glad to have an opportunity to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Anyone else on the negative side? Sir. 3 minutes if possible.
Okay, I'll try. My name is Randy Wagner, and I farm, a retired farmer in western Wayne County, about an hour west of here. And I live pretty much in the center of a 230 to 50 turbine development. And when they contacted me in 2016 when I put some on my farm property, and they told me that a turbine setback of 1,500 feet from a home, you could not hear them. And so my wife and I were thinking about doing it, and then I started doing research and found out about what the turbines do to home values, how negative and how they hurt home values. And the one study that was most reputable, or two of them, the first one was done by a Chicago appraisal firm, and they did a study of 28 separate developments in 8 states. And they found losses from the turbine back 2 miles of 25 to 40% on residents' homes. And then the other study that I read was a 7-year study done by the London School of Economics, one of the top business schools in the world. Their study was 7 years long about home values in England and development of wind. And the losses were similar to that study by the appraisal firm Chicago. At that point, my wife and I decided that it was wrong to put a turbine on our property if it would devalue our neighbors' acreages, because we have some beautiful acreages around our property, and we decided not to. So since we made our decision not to put anything on our farmland, turbines have gone up all around us. There's, within a 2-mile radius of my home, there's 20 turbines, and only 4 of them are owned locally. The rest are all absentee landowners. There's 4 5,000 feet a mile straight south of my house. They're grouped together, there are 4 of them, they're 1,000 feet apart, they're all in a line. And the noise is, I would say at a mile, is irritable when you're outside, depending upon the day. We have a cement patio behind our house, and like if we're out on the patio after supper, out there relaxing with, the noise can be annoying, so we're gonna buy a waterfall that we can find. It makes the most noise to block out the noise from the turbines. But between where I live and the 4 turbines are 2 acreages, and they're right across from each other. And they're people, the acreages are on farmland or owned by a local guy. The acreages have been rented out for years, and they would be about 2,500 feet from those towers. And about 6 months after the towers were operational, the one guy is a trucker, he's been my neighbor for 25 years, he moved out, couldn't handle the noise anymore. That's at 2,500 feet. The other guy right across the road, 2,500 feet from those 4 towers, he was gone. Now, if you rent property, the one guy lived there 25 years, the other guy 7, they could move out. But if you own an acreage, you just can't, you know. A lot of times people are just stuck with their acreages. And some of them, if the noise is so bad, they just move out. So if I would just like to recommend it to your board, if you can, do a minimum of a mile setback from a residence to a turbine. Minimum. 2 would be ideal, 2 miles. But if I know what 2,500 feet has done to my neighbors, and they moved out and are gone from the turbines too. And I just wanted to give you the information from someone that lives in the development. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Anybody else on the negative side? Hearing none, I move we close the public hearing.
Second, Munson.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Monson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0.
We gotta approve the first reading?
Yeah, we need a
I'll
motion.
move that.
David Gleiser, Director of Community Economic Development. If I could, Supervisors, could I ask the motion to reflect an amendment to incorporate the protections for the Luss Hills?
Well, that's what was presented, wasn't it?
Yes.
And what's your minimum for the Luss Hills protection?
I have, so what you received in your board packet.
Okay, gotcha.
I added language from there, and I have copies of that for the public, but I can read it into the record, Joshua, or how it.
Well, it'll be in for the second reading.
It will, and then I'll also update the copy in the auditor's office as well, first thing tomorrow morning. So.
I'll move the first reading with the addition for the second reading.
Second.
Is that sufficient?
Yeah, there's no need to read it into the record.
Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Motion by Radig, second by Wright.
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
could I just ask a clarifying question for the 2 gentlemen? Are you against an ordinance in that you believe we should have no ordinance? Because that would seem to, as the county engineer said, allow someone to come in and build 250 windmills without coming to the board. Because I'm just a little confused because you spoke against the ordinance, but.
Doug, can you come up here real quick?
Yeah, either one of you.
Or both of you for that matter, but basically the question, you're not opposed to our, you are or are not opposed to our ordinance?
I think I misunderstood technically what we were speaking for or against.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Well, to be clear, for a public hearing, anyone can come and ask questions or say anything they want to. You don't have to take a position on what the board is considering. So I don't think it's fair to ask members of the public to publicly take a position.
I tried to clarify that when I started my presentation, is I'm not here as anybody other than a concerned citizen of the United States and a taxpayer. So the information I got, if it's of any use at all, use it appropriately, however you see fit. And
Yeah, I appreciate Randy's words on the setback issues, especially in.
It's very important, and very few people knew it, and a lot of the farmers that developed in my neighborhood had no idea. They believed that at 1,500 feet you couldn't hear them. They believed the wind turbine company's nonsense that they told everybody.
Right, and as far as the Luss Hills goes, I'd rather see more than a mile personally.
Oh, yeah.
But
The Luss Hills are famous.
internationally famous.
They are.
Thank you.
So we have a first and a second to approve the first reading with the addendum.
I have the motion and a second to approve the first reading as is, and the amendment will be in the second reading.
Okay.
Is that correct, Joshua?
Yeah.
That sounds right. Any other questions?
Well, I think the motion would be to approve the first reading as amended.
I don't know, that really matters either way, because it'll be different next week.
It'll be updated for next week, but basically, the board is approving it tonight with the understanding that those
Changes will be
that we
made.
talked about are gonna be incorporated for the next reading.
As amended.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. I think this brings us back to the Woolies.
Boy, this is gonna be a tough transition.
Well, we can't have Wendy anymore tonight. We just gotta, can you get you folks back up here and we'll figure this out?
It's actually a good premise for a play.
Do we have any questions for the Woolies, please? Other issues, other questions between the board and them?
Do you have any additional documentation related to each entity that's currently funding the project, or those that you're trying to convince to provide funding?
We do, we have some kind of secretive things right now that people are making decisions on, foundations are making decisions on. We did get the Blue Stem Foundation with $500,000, and with a, and then also, let's see.
The Grayfield, 800,000.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, because I think.
We've raised a little over 7 million, raised and pledged.
Right, I think what Josh mentioned earlier is if you have, for each entity that you're seeking funding from, the more documentation that we have that kind of lays out.
Oh,
the
sure,
terms of seeking that funding,
actually, I could,
protects
I don't
us
have
so
it
that,
with, no.
I think what we want to avoid, we don't want to approve any funding that later on somebody's going to say, no, you can't do that,
Right.
and take it away. That puts you in a really, really terrible spot.
Yeah, that'd be icky. Yeah.
Is that fair to characterize your words?
Well, I think, yeah, if we had some specifics as far as the funding from Woodbury County would go to X, whatever that is.
Would go to, as far as X to the build, with,
Right, a specific part of the project, or it's going to be used as a match for this specific grant, then we have a better way of analyzing it as far as making it fit within the parameters that the county needs to look at for making such a contribution. So that's what I'm getting at, I think, Justin.
does that make sense?
Yeah, so we can talk about that more later, I think.
Oh, yeah, I could, that sounds kind of fun. No, I understand, Yeah, okay, I can certainly come up with that, and do I email it to you all, or how do I do that?
I would
Send
say
it to
Dennis
Josh.
Butler would probably be the
Dennis?
one to kind of gather that information, and then I can be a part of whatever discussions
Okay,
we need to from there.
all righty, that sounds good to me.
We're getting a little closer
We
all
are
the
getting
time.
closer, and I appreciate, I'd rather than jumping, as I said last
Yeah.
time, I don't want to jump and do something. Okay, I'm the windy one, okay, all right, I'm done.
So where does that leave us for item number 8, Mr. Monson?
Well, it sounds to me like we need to, what's the right word?
Well, we could just do no action on this or delete from the agenda, and then you can bring it back when there's the right information that's needed.
Defer, is that the word?
Well, if we defer, you put a date on it, right? So,
Wouldn't hurt.
well,
We could,
Yeah,
in another 2 weeks if you wish.
well, yeah, 2 weeks would be easy, 1 week.
I'd move we defer this item for 2 weeks.
Second. Motion by Monson, second by DeWitt to defer for 2 weeks on the Lamb Arts Limited issue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will now recess the Board of Supervisors meeting and convene the Grant Township Trustees meeting. Item number 9, approval of minutes of the June 15.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Wright, second by Monson. Any questions on the issue? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. We will adjourn the Grant Township Trustees meeting and convene the Bennett McDonald Smithland Drainage District's Trustees meeting. Item 10, approval of contract from RP Constructors for culvert cleanout for the effective drainage districts.
The Board of Supervisors has been dealing with Bennett McDonald Smithland Drainage District and the unclassified rating established by Corps of Engineers as far as our eligibility and compliance with flood protection standards. One of the issues that we were non-compliant in was in getting video of all of the pipes and conduits that flow through the dike that protects the Bennett McDonald Smithland areas. We recently accomplished that work, but found that a number of the culverts are plugged at this point in time. RP Constructors has given us a proposal for $4,999 to come and flush those and then capture the sediment. We can't just discharge that sediment into the river. Our staff will be assisting with heavy equipment to save a little bit of money on that end. They'll be providing the silt curtains to protect the silt from getting into the river, and then the pump, and they'll just be using river water basically to flush these. But that is one thing the video showed, that a number of these conduits under the dike were plugged, and we do need to get those restored and opened. I recommend that you approve the contract, or the, shouldn't be contract, should be proposal from RP Constructors to clean out the affected drainage district.
Move it.
About how many culverts were blocked?
Trying to remember right now. I know the 4 at the Highway 141 are not. I think we have about 5 other tile that flow underneath there that are. The big 4x4 box culvert is partially silted, but we can get in and do that with low water. Basically, we can almost, we just reach in, pull those ends out, clean them out with a backhoe. Our crew will take care of that one. It's those small culverts. We have some 8-inch tile that go under there that are plugged at the outlet, basically.
I'm just kind of curious to how it works out, like $5,000 per X amount of work.
It's how many hours it takes.
Sure.
And then the, silt curtains, when they get done, they're done. But basically, they'll capture the silt. Our staff will use the backhoe, put it in trucks, and haul it out of there. So those curtains are designed to capture it right up against the riverbank and prevent it from
going in, being
discharged downstream. So
you wouldn't want that dirt to get in with the dirt.
Pardon me?
You wouldn't want that dirt to get in there with the dirt, right?
Right, yeah.
Motion by Monson,
Don't get me started.
second by DeWitt. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Adjourn Bennett McDonald Smithland Drainage District Trustees meeting and continue with the Board of Supervisors meeting. Secondary roads, consider award of bid for bank protection for project number Perrin 145 and approve resolution to direct county engineer to sign contract and bond.
This is a bank protection along our highway embankment on County Route D12, just west of the Highway 140 intersection. We had bid this in-house, found out that DOT, for us to be able to use ER money, since we were no longer under an emergency period, we were required to bid it at DOT to be eligible for the ER funds, which are putting out 80% of the money for this project. DOT took bids. A low bid has been recommended. DOT has also requested in the process where the county engineer can now electronically sign for the Board of Supervisors with the passage of a resolution. Everything's now being done electronically on the...
We already passed that, didn't we?
You have to pass one for each project. And the change now is that construction material prices are changing so quickly They're asking for you to award the bid and approve me to sign as soon as the contractor returns the appropriate signed contract and bond, because by waiting that additional 4 or 5 days it might take to cycle through the board's agenda, they might lose their price on some of the materials used for the project.
So, and it's just a procedural thing, but I think this was something the auditor, who's not here, can't speak on behalf of that, but I think Pat wanted Vermont, well, like, these to be 2 separate items on the agenda. Like, so the resolution to sign for that was supposed to be one item, and then,
The award a separate one?
yeah.
I have a motion to award the bid and a motion to approve and authorize the resolution, bid award and designation of county engineer.
Yeah, so, yeah, but I think he wanted those as like an A, B in the future. Didn't he say that the last time we did one of these? That was just in my head.
I missed that, I guess. I pulled the old agenda and modified it for this, but I don't care how the board does that part.
And
It's all
it's a
contained within the
procedural
request
thing
for
that
information. The first thing would be, I recommend award of the bid to L.A. Carlson Contracting for $89,562.25.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Monson. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Now that you have awarded, I can read the other 5 bids as well. Second place was $102,677 by Peterson Contractors. MLS Landscaping was $107,839. Riley Construction was $124,535. Boyle Built Enterprises was $131,759, and Nelson and Rock Contracting came in at $172,875. So we had a lot of interest in this project. We had 8 bidders last time and 6 this time. So next would be approval of the resolution.
I'll move that.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Monson to approve resolution to direct the county engineer to sign the contract and bond. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B, approve of the plans for project number parent 142.
This is for the PCC replacement of the pavement from Highway 141, Iowa Highway 141, north through Hornick to 300th Street, then turning on 300th Street and going east toward Holly Springs where our material stockpiles are. We also have a project that is from 300th Street north to 141 that is not eligible for federal aid. Because of our farm to market balance and the recent increase in estimated cost of construction, we're going to exceed our 3-year borrow ahead limit by letting that second farm to market project. My office is proposing we'll be delaying that. We'll add that portion of K64 south of 141 and create that as a standalone project at a later point when our farm to market balance recovers. Again, we may get great bids on this and it may not prove to be quite so much of an issue, but we're probably falling back to fiscal year 2022 for that letting. So about this time next year, we'll be looking at letting that remaining paving. I recommend approval of the plans.
I'll move it.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Reports on, is there anything we missed? Because we sure bounced around a lot. Reports on committee meetings.
I got a couple. The Woodbury County Conservation Board met out at Bigelow Park, beautiful park. They are coming to see Dennis about a bond issue that they will repay themselves to cover all the services at Bigelow Park. They are in the process of draining there are 3 lakes at Snyder's Bend. The one you see on TV with all the dead fish is drained. The other 2, they will drain and remove the fish. And then they hope to turn the water back on and refill those as much as they can. They are, they're a busy group. They got a lot of stuff going on. Enjoy the heck out of their meetings. Well, there's the rest of it. I had a comment from somebody today that they got up in Southward Park and didn't know it was there. Beautiful park.
Southwood, yeah.
Southwood, yeah. And this morning, the Woodbury County Soil and Water Conservation met in Sergeant Bluff, and they track a lot of stuff. The comment that stuck with me was there's an awful lot of terraces disappearing. And the thing that's interesting is that they received money to put in those terraces maybe 40, 50 years ago, but they are still bound to report what happened to those terraces today. So there's a lot of them going out. Many of them are taking out a center one so they can get the big rigs through them. That's all I got.
Mr. DeWitt and I attended earlier today the special meeting of the WCICC to approve the Motorola data retention system.
It was pleasantly short, that meeting, too, by the way.
Yeah.
I have nothing. Round 2 of citizen concerns. Anybody can keep it under 4 seconds.
We're doing a dust control palliative demonstration in Southwood Park. I heard the park mentioned earlier with a product called BioBlend. It's a soy-based dust palliative. We did a number of projects with it last year, experimenting with different formulations. This year they feel they have it ready for prime time. So we'll see if it is an ag-based product that would use soybeans grown here in the rest of the state. We'll see how well it does in comparison to our standard products. So if you're driving through Southwood, look for it.
You just spray the road with corn syrup.
You're killing the 4-second part, really. Board, any other citizen concerns? Board concerns?
Sure. Next Tuesday, I'll be calling in. I'll be on vacation in California. So thank you, Karen, for answering the phone.
I still have concerns about the wind energy in the Luss Hills. I want to make sure they do not have the ability to just go out there and plunk one down.
Nope. Same here.
Wording, that's not my thing.
Any other board concerns? We are adjourned.
All right, who wants to talk to us about wind stuff?